Right, so I think this is live. Sorry that you've been. Oh, fudge cake. That's not. Oh, hang on. Oh, maybe that's right. Okay. So, little bit of a delay to the stream because the fireworks shows for 5th of November. That's not a lot I can do about that. But I'm awaiting an invite to the lobby because they've made it not joinable. So, I don't know if I will be able to get on because annoyingly, the people who I can get invites off are actually racing because it's just painful. So I can't join off of them either because they've made the game invite only, which is irritating. Like, very irritating. Oh, this is really not it, is it? I don't know why I started the stream. I started the stream because I thought I could join, and then I didn't join, so I can stop it, but that kind of ruins it. So I suppose we can have a bit of a chat, very, very briefly, about the state of the championship. And if I can find the standings, we can have a quick review. There we go. Ah, that's helpful. I've just spilt half a litre of lilt down myself. That's nice. Ah, well, that's just going to have to stay wet, isn't it? Alright. So. Oh. See if I can join off them through here. That's the wrong person. Yeah. No. Toast? No, that's not an option, is there really? Chewy. No, right. So, irritatingly, the tier coordinators are drivers. And so the Tier 1 Drivers' Championship, as it stands, I believe this has been updated from... Yeah, so this is updated from Baku. So going into this race, Shui has the championship lead, and he has a 30-point gap to Jur in second. So it is Red Bull 1-2 in the championship as it stands. VER Bram, who Bram didn't actually drive the first two races of the season because he didn't have the seat, is P3 in the standings. He's 51 points off the lead, followed by the McLaren of DET Mitwee, who that's a pretty decent job to be in P4 in the championship, considering he didn't race the first two races of the season either. And there we go, we have an invite. Thank you, Shui. And cheers for Adam, who's an Xbox friend as well. I suppose that's quite helpful too. Toast, the other AlphaTauri in P5 in the standings. Just to make sure we spectate when we get into the lobby. Well, we got an invite of Toast as well, so I assume qualies may be over. Which is slightly irritating, which means we'll have missed quali, but you'll see the order that they line up going into the British Grand Prix, which isn't a sprint race, which I suppose it could have been, but it isn't. That's next weekend at Austria. P6 in the standings currently is the Ferrari of Jack Ledford, who has been slightly linked with Mercedes because of some falling out between, I don't know, I'm not quite sure what went down, but either way. There's a bit of unrest between him and Ferrari. I'm not sure if that's settled yet. And then a third AlphaTauri driver in P7 in the championship. So, and yeah, none of my Williams drivers have done very well. I have Milan as a tier 2 driver in a tier 1 race. He has 6 points and Super Mario has 5. Smaller yet to get any points, so my highest score in tier 1 is a tier 2 driver. That's slightly irritating, but here we are into qualifying. We actually are in before the last round of quali laps, which is, to be fair, pretty helpful. And as you can see, it is Shui who has pole position as it stands, provisional pole, followed by the AlphaTauri's Toast, and then Jer, as Lewis retires from the session, and we need to get all these up because I don't know, that's not that helpful, is it? That needs to be on full track map. So it looks like he's gone straight on at Maggots and Beckett's, and just that's quite a big accident, I think, for the Haas driver having to stand in for Matt Copper 97, as we see two AlphaTauris inside each other very briefly, which was a bit odd. But everyone now heading out of the pits to head on to a final, well, to go on to an outlap for their final run. Mitwee in P4, so he is doing a stellar job for the McLaren team so far this season. Followed by Sir with Face, who is standing in for one of the Ferrari drivers as a tier 2 driver. VER Brown in P6, A22 in P7, who I know he is a tier 1 driver. Sheehan also tier 1. Wickus, I don't know, I don't recognise, but I think he's new. He is a tier 1 driver though, so it'll be interesting to see how he does on his debut in Formula 1. Wow. Great Horizon 96 might be his debut as well. I cannot remember. He is on a flyer though. He went out early. He might find himself in traffic heading through this lap, as he's ahead of the two AlphaTauris though, and he goes through that corner, which is gonna, oh no, what have I done? As he goes through Maggots and Beckett's and heads out down what is oh, that is a very interesting way of getting out of the way from Sheehan. Bit questionable there, as Jer 13 and DT Mitwee all begin to start their last 5 laps, and that's a spin heading around a corner which I really should know as well, on the run down to Club Corner, and that's going to pretty much ruin the Alfa Romeo's qualifying and mean that he starts either last or second last, although High hasn't come out for a lap, so that might save him slightly. Jer is currently up on his time, but considering the gap to Shui, which is currently 3 1/4 tenths, it doesn't look like he's, well, 3 3/4 tenths, I was looking at Toast. It doesn't look like he'd be set to set a faster time, as he now heads down this back straight, which I'm going to have to get a track map up. Why do I not know Silverstone? This is a problem. I've just gone absolutely blank. We have yellows in other sectors, as the Aston Martin's just getting out of everyone's way down. Then the run into oh, it's gone. It's actually gone. Around onto the Hamilton straight across the line. It's an improvement by 4 hundredths of a second. Wait, no, 44 thousandths of a second. And that keeps him P3. Toast behind is also improving, but nowhere near enough to take pole from Shui. Shui is heading through the same sector now, just behind Toast. He is also improving by quite a greater margin. So it looks like Shui is set to take pole position in this race. And behind Mitt, we can't improve enough to gain any positions. So if Face had a mistake on that lap, VER Bram is improving by about 3 tenths as he crosses the line and improves to P5. Shui does take pole position by almost half a second to SLX Toastman in P2, and Sheehan and Weekus can't improve their times. So this is your qualifying order going into the race at Silverstone. and High 101 not setting a lap, which is interesting considering he is maybe in the session. Or maybe he isn't in the session then. That may explain it. But I need to get a Silverstone track map up because my brain is absolutely fried. I usually know tracks as well. Oh. Alright. So, there we are. Shui pole position in a perfect... It's a perfect opportunity to extend his lead in the championship by even more to those behind. Well, the chasing pack of Toast, Jer, Mitwee, Bram, all directly behind him though. So it's clear that there is a bar that is being set by Shui, Toast, Jer, Mitwee, Bram, and those behind just can't compete with it. It is essentially like the Ferrari, the Red Bull, and the Merc currently in F1. If those behind were a little bit slower and couldn't sometimes keep up, but you might get the picture. And I'm going to try and find something useful. Our internal storage. I should have. Yeah, I do have a track map saved. Let's go. Opening gallery. What was the corners I was thinking of? It is the Hanger Straight. Stowe, obviously. Chapel Cops. Of course it's Cops Corner. Oh. I'm just too tired for this. I think too tired for this. It is the Hamilton Straight. I was worried about that one. That's Brooklands. That's Luffield. That's Atwood. That's Woodcott. Wellington Straight's the other straight. Yep, I know that. And then there's the old Pit Straight, which isn't the Wellington Straight. So then that is... Yeah, no, that's her. Yeah. So we're going to have a 25-second-ish timer, unless everyone readies up for the race. And then we'll have the formation lap just to see what strategies may be at play here for Tier 1 of F1WL. So there we are, onto the formation lap. I'll get up the telemetry, bring up the lap data, detail. I'll put position change on off the start. No, tyres is the important thing. So High is back in this race. He's starting second last. So it'll be interesting to see how he can... Oh, he's... Well, okay, maybe not, because he has just immediately left again. So the front... Well, the first two rows, all sporting the yellow... just almost shoulder. Ouch. Right, so the front two rows, all sporting the yellow stripe medium tyre, followed by VER Brown on a different strategy to his teammate in front of him. So, interesting how Shui and Jer going for what looks like exactly the same strategy. If they end up this position, Jer will have to either go a lap early or a lap later, just to... obviously that is dependent on him not being a pit stop behind by the pit stop stage, but that shouldn't really be the case, as he has recently looked to be on the pace, if not faster than his teammate in this middle section of the season. There's a couple on hards, A22 and Sheehan, which would... It's an interesting start. They are definitely banking on no incidents going into the first couple of laps, whereas VR Brown and Great Horizon 96 are kind of going for the opposite. And as you can see, the predicted pit stop strategy is lap 12 to 16 those mediums will start to fall off, which means lap 12 to... Wait, no. 12 to 16 laps they will last, which means 12 to 16 laps from the end will be when those hard runners box onto mediums. The softs probably won't last too long, but I suppose we are about to find out. It's basically hard, medium, or medium hard that is the preferred strategy, providing that there are no big incidents. And we go to 5 red lights. A little bit of a stutter there. 5 red lights. And we are underway. And it's a pretty good start from those ahead. But the McLaren falls immediately behind VR Brown, who's got the soft tyres, and he's going to have the better grip off the line. And there's a bit of a squeeze on the second Red Bull from the leading AlphaTauri. So the McLaren losing out immediately to the soft runners behind. And Great Horizon 96 already gaining a couple of places from the start on those soft tyres, but getting bunched up slightly with the pack behind. Shui gets a decent getaway and is already half a second ahead. We have yellows behind as Sheehan spins, and High rejoins, so his AI, he'll take over from his AI. And Shui up front already has a 6/10 gap to the AlphaTauri. Heading into Cops, that looked very almost side by side from the from VR Brown on Jer 13. VR Brown is definitely reeling in those ahead of him on the faster compound, and he's definitely doing a good job, burning a fair bit of ERS, but that is to be expected in the start of this race, as it's Great Horizon 96 further back again, looking to gain another position as he goes, well, he defends around the outside going into Stowe and up to P6 from the start, so he's gained 4 positions as the Alfa Romeo. It's a bit of a shame off the start from the McLaren of DET Mitwee, but there's not a lot he could do about faster cars on, well, faster tyres behind him. And I think there's a spin from the Ferrari further back, and Sheehan not really being able to get his tyres down to a good enough to an operating temperature, as Shui lost a tenth or so to Toast on the lap before. So Toast is definitely starting to get into the rhythm of it. He's got VR Bram behind. There might be a bit of teamwork to let Bram through and chase after Shui, because he's definitely on a different strategy, and at this stage he is faster. Losing out to Bram, which puts the Red Bull in a slightly worse position fighting the AlphaTauris. But then, are they going to be fighting the AlphaTauris, or are they going to be working together to fight those behind? As Mitwee defends slightly from Great Horizon 96, who's going to have the much better grip on those soft tyres, heading through Maggots and then Beckett's and out of Chapel. We see everyone looking quite clean through there, but then we had a spinner further back, High 101, back in his car and just losing the rear out of Luffield, I think. As DT Mitwee having to deploy a lot of ERS to keep the Alfa Romeo on faster tyres behind. And as he gets closer heading into the corner and around onto the Hamilton straight, he's just going to have to stick close to him through this first sector, and he might get a go down the Wellington straight into Brooklands. If not, his best bet is down the Hangar straight going into Stowe, because otherwise the first straight is just not going to work for anyone really. VR Bram is maintaining a decent gap to Toastman, but he isn't gaining the way he'd like to on the faster tyres. Jer is still staying within a decent gap of him. So those soft tyres already starting to show weakness within the first couple of laps, and he is going to drop a fair way back when he pits, presumably onto mediums and then mediums again, or mediums and softs, or hards to softs. It depends on how brave he's feeling in this race and how well he believes he can preserve tyres. As Mitwee already out of DRS, almost out of DRS to Jer 13, as DRS I believe is enabled. So heading down Hangar straight, we're going to get a bit of a train, but who's willing to deploy ERS and rein in those ahead of them faster? And it looks like the gaps are pretty stagnant as it stands, although Lewis 9727 in the Haas getting very close to the back of the Aston Martin through Stowe. He's going to get right in the slipstream, and he might look up the inside. No, there's no move there. There's no move there. But if he stays close enough and gets a decent run out of this last corner and onto the Hamilton straight, there could be a little bit twitchy, so that move is pretty much lost from the Haas driver. But it's the most interesting battle is at the back of the field for 8th position, as Wickes is quite close to the back of the Alpine of A22 as well. So they are all currently on. There's 2 medium runners chasing a hard tyre runner, and that hard tyre runner is doing a good job to be where he is currently, with the other hard tyre runner being Sheehan, and clearly couldn't get those hard tyres up to temperature within the first couple of laps. As up ahead, VR Bram is losing out slightly overall to his teammate, which might be a play if he's wanting to preserve the tyres and go a little bit longer. But the Haas is right in the slipstream of the Aston Martin again, almost pushing him through Copse, and the Aston Martin gets a bit caught up on the curb. Is the Haas going to look to? No, he's not brave enough to go down the inside into Maggots, and he's just going to stick to the back of the Aramco Aston Martin through Beckett's, and if he can get a good enough exit out of Chapel and onto the Hangar straight, he might just be able to send one down the inside at Stowe. He's going to get a good run. He looks to the inside, but no moves there, and he's just going to have to stick behind again. We have yellows back down the Hangar straight as High 101 retires. Sheehan heading down the straight. We're going to see maybe what happened as he's lost a front wing down a straight and caused a full course safety car. That might do Bram nicely, although he's missed the. He's already passed the pit lane, so that is that is pretty dreadful timing from Bram. It's pretty much exactly what he'd want to happen, and he's just not in the right position to capitalise from it. As it's a very, very suspect DNF from High 101. Did look like it may have been slightly on purpose, but we'll have to see. Maybe if someone's on board might have I don't know if there is anything against knocking yourself out of the race on purpose. I assume there probably is if you've got good evidence of it. But then that is if he did, which he might not have done. It might have just been a hardware or software malfunction. We don't know. But this presumably should play perfectly into the hands of that second AlphaTauri we see on our screen about now. But it just doesn't, and that must be pretty frustrating. He's gambled on the strategy that would normally be a medium to hard or a hard to medium race. He's gambled and bolted on those Red Bull soft tyres, thinking there would be an early safety car, and there has, and it's just not come at the right time for him. And if he does box now, he's going to come out right at the back of this whole pack. Bar the Ferrari. He will be behind the Ferrari, and it's going to be an all. He probably should come out behind the Ferrari, with the Ferrari being around 20 seconds back by the time they get around to the pits. Although it would be rather close, or the pit lane for Britain is pretty long. I think the pits. Yeah, he does box, so he has realised that he can't take those softs any longer. Great Horizon in the exact same position, so those softs couldn't last as long enough to maybe gamble for another safety car. I suppose the odds of another safety car at this calibre of tier 1 are probably quite low, although Sheehan is still in the race, so there is always that possibility. And they are going to come out behind Sheehan and behind Sir with Face, as I mentioned, in the Ferrari. So those on hard tyres who were A22 and Sheehan, they're going to have a whole nother load of pain as the safety car restart comes about, because warming those tyres up is going to be a whole problem itself. And ironically, the least weaving is coming from this Alpine down the straight. Both Alpines on the hards. I didn't clock that they were both Alpines on the hard tyres. So it's interesting how they've both gambled on a different strategy. And it's the same, so one of them's going to have to go long, assuming Sheehan expects to get that far in the race to the pit stop stage. Obviously, it is a one-stop. 50% races on this game are generally just one-stops, mediums to hards, hards to mediums, depending on how you fancy on the day. And the safety car is not in this lap, so we do have another lap of safety car running. Well, not in this lap as of yet. So we have at least another half a lap or so of safety car running before we can get this underway. And those soft runners have boxed. Oh, safety car is in this lap, so I kind of jinxed myself. I made myself look like a bit of an idiot there. And Great Horizon is now on the medium tyres. VER Bram on the hards, so Bram looking to maybe extend those hards to the end or to another set of softs. Great Horizon, those mediums will not make it to the end, although maybe they could do if he really pulls a prime Sergio Perez out of the bag and tyre saves like his life depends on it. Otherwise he'll probably have to bolt on some softs at the end. But as Shuey takes control of the speed of the field and heads round out of this last corner and onto the Hamilton straight, he has a half-second gap immediately. So Toast caught out by this restart. Jur, however, not caught out. He's on the back of the AlphaTauri, not quite as close to the back of the AlphaTauri as he could be, but further back. The Alpine gets a very good launch as well from the safety car restart on those hard tyres that I was not expecting to warm up well. Have warmed up well in his case, although not for Sheehan, who's already dropped down a position, lost a position to VER Brown. Wickus already has a 3-second penalty for multiple warnings. And A22 is piling the pressure on Wickus, who is on the faster tyres. The Haas further back, banging tyres with the Ferrari as they head down the old pit straight and onto... Is it the old pit straight? I believe it is, maybe? I'm not sure now. I think it is, because there would be a pit exit. And he can't stay as close to the back of the Ferrari as he might want to, but then again, he might not want to be that far behind. As he heads through this section, and there'll be no DRS down this straight, so it'll be a case of who dares use DRS. And the Haas is now under pressure from VER Brown behind. So he's gone from being on the offense to being on the defense as he looks for a move down the inside and decides there's not a move there, and it was probably too risky for the AlphaTauri. He doesn't want to lose out in this race more than he already has done from that safety car. As Shuey pumps in a fastest lap immediately, and there's a spinner, and Lewis 9727 is round at the final corner, which is the pressure from the AlphaTauri behind, and he's just cracked going into lap 8 of this race, and he just couldn't hold it together. Shuey with already a 1-second gap to the car behind, so he is absolutely flying in this race, and he has ERS advantage by not a lot. So it's not like he's burnt ERS to get outside of DRS range. He's just got the pace, and Toastman is looking like he's probably struggling in this stage. He's got Jur behind him because of Brown having to pit, so now he's in a Red Bull sandwich. Well, he's in his own little AlphaTauri sandwich with the Red Bull being the seeded loaf around it. And Great Horizon sticking to the back of Brown as we have more yellows, and that's DET Mitwee has maybe lost the rear end out of Cops and just almost lost it across the grass. No visual damage on the front wing, so he'll be able to continue without having to box in this race, although he might have flat spotted his tyres pretty badly, or at least, worn them quite badly. I'm not sure if flat spotting's a thing in the game. But further up again, A22 piling the pressure on Wickus, and he has the Ferrari behind him bearing down his neck as well. So one mistake like what happened to the Haas a lap ago, and it's all going to unravel for one driver here, as the Alpine gets closer and closer to the back of the Aston Martin, heading through this section and into Village. More yellows in Sector 3 as the Haas again spins around the final corner. DT Mitwee catching up, trying to do the best he can to catch up to the back of the pack here. And Shuey extending his lead by even more. It's now 2 tenths bigger than it was the last time we checked. And as I was about to say, backing up the 3 in a league of their own, he spins, and had I got them words out, it would have been a prime commentator's curse moment. That is an awful mistake from the Red Bull driver, and that's going to completely overhaul his strategy in this race, because he's now in 8th position behind 2 runners that have already pit, and a hard tyre runner, as well as Sir with Face and Wickers. So it's now a straight shootout with a 5-second gap from 2nd to 3rd. A straight shootout between the Red Bull lead driver and I assume it's the AlphaTauri lead driver, at least in the championship. And there is a 1.2 second gap between them, so Toaster's picked the pace up slightly to bridge a tenth of the 1.3 second gap it was before. As we have more yellows in Sector 2 and Sector 3, Lewis 9727 losing the rear again through Maggots and Beckett's. He is missing an end plate on that left hand side. So it's clearly not a good day in the office for the Haas driver or the McLaren driver ahead of him, who seemed to spin again heading out of Luffield. Getting close to the back of Great Horizon, but Great Horizon's on newer medium tyres, and so is VER Bram ahead of him. So Jer's going to have a very difficult time getting past these 2 drivers on less worn, quicker tyres. Well, they will be quicker with... Jer looks to the inside, but there's no move there, and he goes a little bit deep through that corner, it looked, but then it seemed that he hit the apex perfectly fine, so no problem there from the Red Bull driver. He's very close to the back of the Alfa Romeo, almost pushing him, it looked, as he heads up the old pit straight and through to Copse Corner. A little train forming, a DRS train behind Wickers, who seems to have the pace to keep the hard tyre runner of A22 behind him, but not the pace to stick with SLX Toastman, who now has a 5.9 second gap to the Aston Martin behind. Wickers with not a lot of ERS to play with, and A22 with even less. So yes, he's on the hard tyres and he's making them work. He's making them work at the cost of his energy recovery system. He's going to have no battery by the time he gets onto those medium tyres. And he's going to be in a world of pain unless there's another safety car that helps him recharge it again. And the benefits of those behind in a train is that, yes, they're losing out on the 2 out front, but they don't... Some of these drivers aren't expecting to be fighting at the front. Great Horizon 96, Sir with Face, A22, Wickers. Ooh, that is a very, very good move from Sir with Face. He's just gone around the outside of A22, and that was just shows the medium grip is much, much greater than the hard tyres at this moment in the Grand Prix. Although it's pretty much getting to bang on the crossover period, and the lack of ERS for the Alpine driver means he can't get the position back heading through Luffield. And I was completely cut off by that move from the Ferrari, and the AlphaTauri almost pushing the Alpine down the straight again, but he's not going to make a move into Copse because that would be silly. Who would ever do that? Lewis Hamilton. And as he looks to send one up the inside into Maggots, and he makes it stick, and VER Brown working those hard tyres, and that is another spin for the Haas at turn 1. It's really not... It's been an awful day for him, having to stand in for his tier 1, one of his tier 1 drivers. He's got a 10-second penalty for exceeding track limits, which is a very interesting penalty considering his situation. He's almost a lap down at this point. And VER Bram doing a very good job to stay close to Sir Face after that very, very sketchy moment where this very tight little train just got a lot less tight through Village and up to the Wellington Straight. It was all unravelled by a move by Sir with Face. It meant that Wickers could get a good gap out front and left A22 very, very, very vulnerable to those behind on faster, newer tyres. VER Bram looking now to chase down the Ferrari ahead. Maybe the Ferrari ahead will have better luck overtaking the Aston, with the Ferrari having a decent ERS advantage, not quite as much as I would have expected. Wickers being able to harvest a bit while he had less pressure on him. A22 not getting any respite, as he's now under pressure from Great Horizon 96 in the Alfa Romeo, and can't stay as close to the back of the Alpine, but heading through Maggots into Beckett's, there's no move up the inside of the Alpine like there was on the last lap from VER Brown, but there may be one down this straight here, as he's going to get DRS as the Alfa Romeo, and Great Horizon 96 has got the very, wait, he does make it around the outside before the braking zone. I saw yellow flags and really confused me. I thought for some reason it might have been a safety car. I really was thrown. And SLX Toastman is into the pits. He wasn't getting any benefit from staying out any longer, so he might as well go for the undercut, as the Haas retires at the side of the track after a very torrid time. He spins again a lap later at turn 1 and brings out the safety car. So he's retired on the pit straight, and we saw where he retired. It was a pretty odd position for the AI to retire. It didn't look like he crashed necessarily, but we have another safety car, and SLX Toastman has just come out of the pit, so he's going to lose. He's not necessarily going to lose out. That's pretty much, it's worked in his favour quite well, because the very group, well, very, I need to stop just saying that tons, as we see him slow down to stick to his delta. That train that was ahead of him, that was headed by originally the Aston Martin, who has been overtaken by the Ferrari, we missed that one. So Sir with Face doing a very good job to get past the Aston, who was proving difficult for the Alpine to overtake earlier on. But Toastman gets a slight benefit, I guess, from the safety car being out now. I'm not sure how it's going to work for him. I mean, he might get a benefit, although look at how far ahead Shuey is. He's already heading down, and he boxes as well. So he's 13 seconds ahead, and assuming that Wickers will probably pit off of those medium tyres, so will Sir with Face. He does so. Wickers also does so. Tries to overtake him into the pit lane. That is... They both... Oh, there's a whole host of 5-second penalties for speeding in the pit lane. But that was absurd from the Aston Martin. He's tried to overtake him heading into the pit lane, and it's worked, assuming he now doesn't get a slower stop than the Ferrari. That was crazy. I've never seen someone try that, but it did pay off for the Aston Martin. He's out ahead of the Ferrari. The Alfa Romeo getting caught up slightly. VER Bram and Great Horizon both also boxing, so those medium tyres now being swapped out for other medium tyres in Bram's case. And for Great Horizon, the hards he was on are he's now on... No, so Bram's gone from hards to mediums, Great Horizon's gone from mediums to hards, so both of them will be looking to get to the end from this race, although Great Horizon will probably have an easier time getting to the end of the race, but a more difficult time getting those tyres up to temperature. DET Mitwe still in this race and trying to get back to this. Jer also in this race. I didn't notice how far back Jer 13 was, so he's not had a good race either, and he's going to come up behind Mitwe, and I don't think he'll necessarily struggle to get back to the back of the pack, but he'll definitely struggle to get back through the pack and up to have a fighting chance in this race like he would have hoped at the start. With a P3, well, I think it was a P3 start for the second Red Bull driver. As we have penalties for Great Horizon and Sir Face. Sheehan had a penalty that was served in the pit stop, I believe. So might have... No, so Wickers had a penalty, but then he got another 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. We'll now check and see... So he got 8-second penalties, so none of them were served in the pit lane. Sir with Face with a 10-second penalty. Now 5 seconds of that was speeding in the pit lane. And I can't help but think the other 5 seconds of that may have been related to Wickers overtaking him into the pits. Because maybe I saw something that... Or maybe they know something that I don't. And... that overtake on Wickers originally from the red Ferrari wasn't legal, and he got 5-second penalty for it. It's very interesting how this has played out, because that did look a pretty crazy move for the Aston Martin to go for. Just send one into the pits and end up not getting slowed down for the pit entry, which the Ferrari and the Alfa Romeo behind also didn't do. It's going to be very difficult for Face now to get anything from this race, considering the penalty and the position he's in. Those behind are faster, because they're all, well, would presumably be faster, because they are all tier 1 pace. So the safety car will most likely be in this lap, and we'll see if Shuey can just gap everyone like he did on the last restart, because he immediately built himself a second gap before DRS, which then Toast and Jur then built a 5-second gap to the pack behind before Jur made his little mistake, had a bit of an oopsie through Luffield, well, heading through Brooklands and into Luffield, as we'll have a quick look and see what's to be said about. So the Haas just wasn't having a good time on his controller, apparently, and didn't intend for the safety car to be out, so... Ooh, very interesting line there from the Aston. Looked like he was almost going to get tagged by the VER Brown behind him. Safety car will be in this lap. Shuey takes the lead of the pack again for the 3rd time this race. Is it? Wait, no. Is it the 2nd time this race? Right? I assume. Yeah, there's only been 2 safety cars. I'm way too tired this evening, folks. Nothing said about the pit incident with Face. Although he did say and we are green. It doesn't look... Ooh, Jur immediately getting the position from DET Mitwee, and Wickus under attack from VER Brown behind. He leaves the AlphaTauri space. The AlphaTauri tries to swoop round outside. He can't. He's going to try and get a better run through the section, and it looks like he just might do that. And heading down the Wellington Straight, does he have enough well, is he going to send it with ERS? Has he got a better drive out of the last corner? He just might have. He looks to the inside and decides there's no move there, but he is down the inside. He almost pushes the Aston Martin through Brooklands and gets the position. That is a cracking move from VER Brown. Good job for him, and he's right back in the fight for this podium position, and he can just try and take the fight to his teammate and Shuey ahead of him. Wickus now falling back into the clutches of the train behind him. Great Horizon having to watch out because of A22, who's now back on the same tyres as though, well, he's on his separate strategy, but he's on the faster tyres than those around him, as opposed to being on the slower ones that he was before. Jur is doing quite well. He's already picked off 2 drivers already from the start of this lap, up to P8 from P10 on the restart. Shuey with that 1-second gap already. DRS is just not going to be an issue for him, is it? He's just got the pace to just destroy Toast on the safety car restarts. And ooh, the Red Bull getting quite close to the Alpine there as they head up onto the Hamilton Straight. The Alpine looking like there might be a move on Great Horizon. Great Horizon closing the door, and now the Red Bull looking like he might attack the Alpine. It's looking like there could be a big fight. Ooh, no. The Alpine looked like there could have been a move, and then, oh, that's Jur in the background. Big snap. And he loses out the 2 positions he gained the lap before, and completely undoes all his hard work. He's got DT Mitwee ahead of him, who is fast, but just hasn't had a good time this race. And can he send one at the inside and try and undo the damage immediately? He gains a position back through Brooklands, but DT Mitwee keeps his foot in, and he just might be able to fight back through Luffield. He does just that. Ooh, a little bit of a snap, pushes the Red Bull wide, and Red Bull onto the grass, although that didn't look like it was forced from the McLaren. And heading down this back straight and into Copse, the McLaren has the position, deployment of ERS from Jur to try and stay as close as he can, but it's not. It's a big mistake again from Jur, and he loses out more positions, almost pushing the McLaren through Maggots and then through Beckett as they head out of Chapel and onto the Hangar Straight. No DRS, but ERS are plenty for the Red Bull. He's passed almost before the braking zone. Been a little bit of tyre banging as they head down the straight, and through Stowe, the Red Bull gets the position. Pardon me, sorry anyone who's wearing headphones. That hurt my throat, all of that. Alright. The two Alpines running slightly comfortably in 7th and 8th. They've got Jer behind, who will be chasing after them now he's cleared the McLaren. Although he didn't clear the McLaren convincingly, and he may not have the pace that we thought he might have after qualifying. Those two Alpines might have a good shot of keeping him ahead. Although A22 is right on the back of the Alfa Romeo, and he can admire that rear wing of the Alfa Romeo as much as he wants until he pulls alongside, and until the braking zone where he tries to swoop around the outside into Brooklands, and the inside it becomes for Luffield, and the Alfa Romeo can't keep his foot in, and A22 moves up to 6th position. Sheehan trying to capitalise on his teammate's move, but he's not quite close enough to make any kind of inroads on the car behind, although that must have been a big snap from A22. He's lost out immediately on Great Horizon. He's going to have to probably let his teammate through, or they'll make they'll have a collision, because he's made a mistake immediately heading onto the... Oh, they collide! Both of them collide. Teammates collide, heading into Maggots and Beckett. And that's absolute heartbreak for the Alpine team. Both of their drivers in one fell swoop fall to the back of the pack. They're still in the points and they're still in this race, which is the only consolation they can take from that. But that is awful. And, hey, I hate to have to say it, it may be A22's fault. He makes the mistake, but he doesn't cede the position to his teammate, even though his teammate was probably faster than him at that moment. Further ahead, so with Face looking to try and bridge some gaps to those behind for that 10-second penalty that may become a 5-second penalty depending on what happens with 5 seconds of that penalty. He might be able to appeal it and get it, because I'm not quite sure how he managed to get it, but he has Wickus ahead of him again, and he gets close enough to him, and there's dirt on the side of that Ferrari, so he has been doing a little bit of Carlos Sainz Sr. at some point in this race, although I don't think we really caught that on this broadcast. But this looks like the most interesting fight currently, as everyone else is a pretty stagnant gap apart. The Ferrari can look to get a good exit out of Chapel and onto the Hangar Straight. He's now got DRS, and Wickus doesn't. He's 3.2 seconds off of BER Brown. So it's a Red Bull podium as it stands, and the Ferrari isn't close enough heading through Stowe, but he's almost pushing the Aston Martin, and he's going to deploy ERS to try and get... No move down. Ooh! Big collision further back, and I'm not quite sure who that was. Someone? Was it Great Horizon 96? It might have been. It looked white and red. Like, it looked white. I thought it was a Haas because of the white and red, and I thought, no, the Haas is already out. Great Horizon 96 has absolutely clapped the wall, and it looks like he might not have a front wing as he heads into the pits. And is it a front wing change? Oh, well, he serves part of his... he has 10 seconds of penalties, so he must have got 5 seconds of penalties. No broken front wing for the Alfa Romeo, so that is a very interesting and odd scenario, which we just caught in the back of the broadcast. So with Face still around 3/10 off the back of the Aston Martin, and he can't get close enough to make a move. The Aston Martin doing very well to just keep the Ferrari behind and keep his 4th position on his debut. He'll get DRS down the Hangar Straight. Again, like he did last lap, but this lap he gets a much better exit, and he's going to get past before the braking zone at Stowe. And that's a pretty textbook move from Sir with Face. And ooh, bit of a snap on exit of Stowe, and the Aston Martin immediately back down his inside. Who's going to be the last braker here? Aston Martin takes the position, but will he get a good enough exit? We have yellows for DT Mitwee, who's on the grass at Stowe. But Sir with Face doesn't get the position from Wickers, and Wickers just defends like an absolute lion and capitalises on the Ferrari's mistake. The team we saw on the grass doesn't look like he has any damage, or he would have probably boxed from where he was, but he's got Sheehan immediately behind him. The two Alpine drivers already recovered to 7th and 9th from 9th and 10th because of Great Horizon's little incident and then D-Team Itwy's little incident. So everyone's having little incidents around this track, and it's just further aiding those ahead, the Red Bull and the two Alpha Tauris, who are just cruising in those podium positions. They have a 4.5, well, VL Bram has a 4.5 second buffer to Wickers in P4, and VLX Shui has a 2.6 second buffer to the Alpha Tauri, who could be fighting for this P1. But as it stands, it doesn't look like he is going to be fighting for this P1. And Sir with Face is close again to the Aston Martin, but not close enough. But this time he has Jer breathing down his neck, and he has the pressure on him as well. If he doesn't get this move done soon enough, he's going to be very under pressure from the Red Bull behind. We have more yellows somewhere. Possibly Great Horizon not doing too well on this outlap, but I'm not quite sure. It doesn't look like it was. Although he has dropped back a fair little. And Sheehan gets a position on Mitwi. Mitwi on the grass at the last corner. So we have another spinner out of this last corner. Out of Club Corner. And the Alpines back up to 7th and 8th. So normality has been resumed, it seems. Although there definitely wasn't normal circumstances that led to it. Jer causing some yellows further back as he drops 3.8 seconds off the back of Sir with Face. So he was half a second back. He's made another mistake himself. It's been a torrid day for the second Red Bull driver. His teammate bringing home what looks to be a very solid P1. And he's been just floundering around in most positions at any point in this race. He's been everywhere and not where he wants to be or needs to be in this championship fight. VER Bram looking to pressure his teammate now. He's put his foot on the gas later on in this race. His mediums seem to be faster than his teammates' hard tyres at this point, and this half a second gap may just be bridged over this next couple of laps, although VER Brown with that 3 second penalty will then drop him back behind Toast unless he can build a 3 second barrier. Wickers has lost the position to Sir with Face, but he'll probably look to try and gain it back. Those two in 4th and 5th with 10 seconds of penalties and 11 seconds of penalties. Assuming none of them are overturned, that will drop them more than likely behind Jer. Well, absolutely behind Jer, but then possibly as well behind A22. If A22 can put his foot down and get within 10 or 11 seconds of those two drivers in P4 and 5. And then this recovery drive for the two Alpine drivers may just get slightly sweeter as they gain a free position from penalties. Although A22 with 3 seconds of penalties himself, so it would probably be Sheehan who could benefit, but Sheehan even further back as A22 looking like he gets a little bit wide on the exit of, Luffield. Wickers close but no cigar, I believe, as he gets down this straight. He's not going to be close enough. He'll have DRS. He's not going to use ERS because he's not got a move. There's one begging for him. Well, he's begging for one, but one just isn't appearing. The Ferrari isn't making the mistakes it made the last time he got the position off of the Aston Martin. And now it's the Aston Martin who's going to have Jer breathing down his neck when Jer catches back up, which may not be in too long because Jer does have pace. He just hasn't had the pace consistently. VER Brown did get the position from his teammate, and he's going to look to settle down into a rhythm and try and just gap Postman over the next 2 or so laps to try and gain a 3 second gap, although it seems unlikely, and one way or another it will probably be an AlphaTauri P3, well 2-3 in this race. Shui 4.5 seconds ahead of the two fighting up into Cop's corner. Not necessarily fighting, but they are close to each other and they're not going to want to fight too much. But Toast has the ERS to fight back. He's probably going to deploy all the way down the hangar straight as they head through Maggots and Beckett's. This will require a good exit out of Chapel, which it looks like he gets, and with DRS open and ERS being deployed, VR Bram can defend with the ERS he has, but he doesn't have a lot, and he tries to squeeze his teammate slightly, but then tries to get a better exit and can try and look for a move down the inside to club corner. He's light on the brakes, but he gets slightly locked in by his teammate, and there's no move there, and Toast gets his position back as they head down the main Hamilton straight and back through the first sector. Toast back to P2. But that has just helped Shui even more. Shui now with 5.4 seconds the gap. So he's cruising home in this race to just extend his championship lead by an even bigger margin to his teammate floundering in P6. Although his teammate has been floundering at the bottom of, or around the middle of the standings, he has had pace, and this pace is bringing him closer and closer to the Aston Martin, who hasn't been able to get back past the Ferrari since he was overtaken. He's had the pace to stay with him. It's exactly the same as it was the other way round. They've had the pace to stick together, but it's been struggled to get past each other. And as they head into Cops, he's close to an extent, but it doesn't look like he's going to be close enough to make a move by the end of the hangar straight. Although a little bit wide from the Ferrari, heading through these Oscars, he struggled to hit the apexes, but then he gets a decent enough exit from Chapel. And he's not going to have the benefit of DRS, but Wickers is too far back, and now Jur is within half a second of the Aston Martin as well. And the Aston Martin loses the rear end and is straight into the barrier on the exit of Stowe. He's lucky to still be in this race. He has no front wing and he's going to have to immediately pit by the looks of things. And he gets it all crossed up as he tries to regain control and get back into this race. He's going to lose out to both Alpines and most likely DET Mitwee. So those two Alpines now in P6 and P7. That is absolutely ideal for the two who were both sideways at Maggots and Beckett's after making contact with each other. They've just put their heads down and they've gone for a pretty stellar recovery drive to bring home some solid points for the Alpine team. Jur now looking to pile the pressure on Sir with Face. The pressure definitely got to Wickers. As soon as the Red Bull was behind him, he just melted. And will the same occur with Sir with Face? It looks unlikely because he's probably got the experience in F1WL. Obviously, with it being Wickers' debut, that is a mistake that is not necessary. It's not unlikely to have occurred with the lack of experience in this league. Sir with Face, however, will probably know Jur a bit better, will know his race style, and Jur isn't going to be close enough and doesn't have any ERS to play with down the hangar straight. He's just going to have to stick to the back, as this is the final lap as well. So VLX Shui crosses the line to win the British Grand Prix, followed by Toast P2, VER Bram P3. Sir will get it slowed down for Club Corner ahead of the Red Bull and brings it home for P4, but then drops behind the Red Bull on penalties. A22 and Sheehan will make it a 6-7 finish for the Alpine team. And DT Mitwee will look to bring home P8 for McLaren. So behind them, Wickers and Great Horizon making up the last two finishers of this race, with the Haas and McLaren of Lewis 97.27 and High 101 both DNFing. Great Horizon finishing a lap down, but not by a lot. I believe he was a lap down. Wickers heading around Stowe as we speak. He's not had an opportunity to set a fast lap on these last tyres because obviously his mistake leading on to the last lap. and he crosses the line, that is your finishing order, ladies and gents. Sir with face, if he gets 5 seconds of that penalty removed, it's not going to mean anything, I believe. And he's not going to... Well, it didn't look like he dropped any further back. Well, it didn't look like he'd gain anything from losing 10 less seconds. Although we'll now see as we get through the podium sequence. It's a very dominant W for Shuey again. There was the last couple of rounds, it's looked a little bit sketchy from the Red Bull driver. He's not been at the front like he's wanted to be, like he was at the start of the season. He was very dominant at the start of the season, and it looked to die down slightly. But now he's reasserted P1, and he's reasserted himself as the title challenge for Season 7 of Formula 1 WoW, with AlphaTauri picking up a double podium, adding to their constructors' bid ahead of Red Bull, obviously with their second driver underperforming, you'd think, making quite a few mistakes, but still bringing home P4. So it's a decent job, all things considered, from Jer 13, and Surwithface doesn't drop any further back because of A22 and Sheehan being, well, too far back. Sheehan gets the position of A22 due to penalties. So this is your finishing order. And obviously 11th and 12th not getting any points and not finishing the race anyway. That was a very entertaining race. I have to admit, I did enjoy that one, and I believe I'm probably going to... Well, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm going to aim to be able to provide you with a stream for the next round in Austria. But if there is one, it may not be me, which of course you're all going to be very, very sad about, because you obviously are. I'm just so great. If there is one, it may not be me, but it should be me, just because of exams and revision and all that jazz coming up. So it was a pleasure watching this race, and